can't implement it. This directly contradicts the teaching of the Old Testament and the New Testament and the doctors of the church. I mentioned Aquinas, and the teachings of countless popes all the way up to the 19th century. So if the Catholic Church can change its mind on fundamental matters of things like the death penalty for murder, for example, which is clearly stated in the Torah, mandated as it is in Islam, what's next? I mean, and there are many other examples one can give.
Well, I asked him a question about, like pedophilia and other stuff.
Again, that doesn't inch me more into Islam. That just inches me a little bit further away from agreeing with the current church.
We are not talking about Islam right now. But I asked you said Christian countries, they don't allow that, right? You said that. I told you name one Christian country, and he said Vatican, for example. Right?
I used that as an example.
Yeah, but it should be a good example, right?
What is ideally implemented in terms of education?
But we just established that the Pope, which is represented by the Vatican, or he is represented by the Vatican, is changing, changing everything.
Changing God's law, actually,
Exactly.
because it's literally God's law in the scriptures. It's God's law in the Quran, which is clear, but the church feels it's able to change God's law because it doesn't agree with it anymore.
It's not a contradiction with Catholicism because we believe in binding rules.
No, but it contradicts God's law, though. That's much more serious than that. Because by what right does the church have to abrogate God's laws? By what right?
Because the Pope is considered the representative of Christ.
Okay, remind me where the right comes from, where the church feels it can overturn God's law. Well, it can abolish it. The death penalty, for example, in the Bible, very clear.
That's why I'm saying I can't delve too much into this conversation because I need to go and look into it.
Because I think Muslims would say that this is what, unfortunately, many people in the book have done, is that they give divine rights, if you like, to their monks and their rabbis by allowing them to change God's teaching. And they don't have that right.
Like the right to marry Aisha when she was 6.
No,
her father coming in.
Marriage has nothing to do with it.
Him not to.
No, we're talking here about
always God's will.
That marriage doesn't contradict any biblical law that I'm aware of. Okay, well, where does Prophet's marriage to Aisha contradict any biblical law? Can you mention a biblical law? Because it matters. If there's a biblical law that contradicts the Prophet's practice, I'd be worried. But I've read the Bible, literally every word from cover to cover. I've never come across any law that would be applicable to the Prophet's marriage to Aisha, ever. But I have come across many teachings of the church that contradict God's laws in the Bible. That's the problem.
So what you are believing, right? You don't have the foundation what you are believing. So you believe that wrong. Prophet Muhammad was an example, a prophet. But what he did was wrong, marrying a child, right? But at the same time, we are asking...
If it's at a base level, if it's a contradiction with the church's teaching, then yeah.
The church's teaching that sometimes is not rooted in God's laws, that changes its mind and contradicts God's teaching on numerous matters. Is this a reliable source of authority by which we say, oh, well, it contradicts church's teaching?
This is an example that you've given that I actually need to look and go into, not just suck in whatever you're telling me.
Okay.
So you believe in church law?
Like I believe that conversion is a lifelong thing. You convert to God throughout your life. You draw close to God throughout your life. If you tell me something which is in contradiction, I need to go off and spend a decent amount of time on it, enough to actually value its importance.
Can I give you another example? One of the most serious sins in Catholicism, which is not a sin anymore, by the way, is the practice of usury. Usury? Charging interest on loans, for example. And this is a very serious crime. Thomas Aquinas said it was a punishable crime. Why? It is outlawed in the Bible, of course. Today, the church is very happy, has no problem with usury at all. It's completely halal, completely accepted. This ruling has been abolished.
No, I don't agree with that.
So that's another example. These are not trivial.
To see the extent at which is a contradiction or it's very much a thin line distinction.
But you said...
Because there are a lot of things which that I've noticed with the church where it said something which is in contradiction and then I've gone and looked at it and read into the word.
So why you are following...
Actually it's not a contradiction, it's just a very thin line.
But the thing about death penalty is very black and white. The usury thing is pretty black and white, I would argue. The thing about democracy, which was condemned by Pope Pius XII, you know this because you read these encyclical, I'm sure. Very clear, these are completely unacceptable. Catholics cannot support democracy. democracy, liberalism, socialism, a whole list of things. Now the church advocates most of these things every day.
Well, my point being, does it advocate it on a surface, or is that actually part of the church?
Since Vatican II, I think it's part of Vatican, the church's worldview in a very deep way. Yeah, I think it's been quite secularized. It's adopted the whole Western.
Look at the extent at which Vatican II is actually binding, and what within it is binding.
Oh, it's binding.
Because I'm very new to this, so I actually need to dive into that.
I'm not so concerned if it's binding or not. I'm concerned the church has changed its teaching. Whether or not it's technically binding, I'm not really concerned about that. It's the church's.
Garabandal happened right during when Vatican II was happening, so I do know that there's something going on. If Mary wanted to appear into a village with children in Spain, in rural Spain, for months or years, during the time when this council was happening, that means that it's a very distinctive and controversial and very important council that I need to actually spend a decent amount of time looking at, and I haven't actually spent enough time to actually
Okay.
But why you are
to go off and do a lot more reading.
Can I give you another example of a change that is actually happening now? The Pope, I can't remember the guy's name, he's just appointed an old mate of his to be the new head of what used to be the Holy Office.
Are you talking about the current?
Yeah, the one he's Argentinian, I think. And he's actually stated on record, this is the new head of Catholic doctrine and orthodoxy in the church. He's yet to actually take up the post. He's been appointed, I think in August, September. Anyway, he has stated recently that he approves of the blessing of gay unions. I kid you not. So he stated, by the way, on record in an interview which I've read, this new head of Catholic doctrine, that he supports the blessing of gay relationships, gay unions, not gay marriage. He's very clear, but gay union. So if a gay couple was to go to church and say to the priest or the bishop, "Can you bless?" Yes, according to your new head of doctrine. Now,
it's very stressful what's happening right now. The more I look at it,
okay, I won't give any more examples. I won't give any more examples.
I watch a lot of YouTube about this specifically, and
it is stressful.
But there is a problem.
This is a changing of society. The reason I mention this is not
there are people
because
who have hobbies where they look in to see what different heresies happen.
But you said you.
But this is the head of the Catholic Church. My point is this: that here we have doctrine changing in front of our eyes, because in the Catechism it still says that homosexuality is intrinsically disordered, and it's a very so serious, actually a mortal sin. Now we have the new head of the church saying, well, yeah, priests can bless relationships, and I'm thinking, are you even a Catholic? But apparently he is. Pope says he is. Yeah. So this is doctrine changing, along with about the death penalty, along with usury, along with the church teaching on democracy. There are a long list of fundamental political, moral principles that have changed by the church within a few hundred years. So I would say you can't rely on it as a guidance for God's truth.
Why you are following those laws? You said I follow. Prophet Muhammad married a child.
I want to say, and I want to
contradict.
Goes
against that.
Hey, are you going? Very similar.
You looked into
Oh yeah, there you go. So you're sponsored now.
So you did look into private revelation, right? Did you look into Garabandal?
Private revelation is not the teaching of the church. That's all the Catholics should be concerned about. What matters is teaching. We don't rush to private revelation. Oh, Mary spoke to me this morning and over breakfast, and that's my private revelation. Catholics should look to the official teaching of the church for guidance, not for private revelation.
The Pope has said that private revelation is important, and that he doesn't believe that Our Lady, that Mary would be appearing like a postal lady to some women in the Balkans.
Right. And you think she should appear as a post woman?
I think if we're in a serious enough circumstance, because what you're talking about is very serious for the church, what is happening.
Some say that the church is apostatized.
If you look at Garabandal, if you look at the ones behind it, we are very, very, very close to the warning. And I mean, like, in the next year.
But what would it take for you to think that this is just unacceptable? I mean, for church to bless gay weddings, or I mean, at what point
I don't think that's acceptable at all.
No, I know you don't. But at what point does it cross the line and you say no more?
Would you leave that?
I trust when Christ says that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church.
Which church?
The Catholic Church.
Oh, really? Does it say the Catholic Church? Does it say the Catholic Church? Is it in that passage in Matthew?
It was Peter's church.
And you think the Peter's Church is the Roman Catholic Church today?
Yeah.
That's a big argument. I'm not convinced that Peter would recognise today's church at all. Peter was practicing.
You might say that was my church.
Peter was a Jew
And
who
it's
upheld the
just
law,
about
the Torah. He wasn't a Gentile guy.
So why are you following those laws? We just established that it's keep changing, right? Why you are still following those laws? You said you want to go back and study. That's
Yes.
fine. But in logic, if you found out the truth,
My name is Tony
I
Blair.
don't have any money, sorry.
What do you think it's false belief?
My name is Tony Blair.
But that's God's teachings, right? God's laws. Why they keep changing? What is the reason?
Father Chad Ripper was, I was listening to talking about this recently. They were saying that you literally have to be a biblical scholar to avoid like all the heresies that are going on right now. Like you have to. It's like a full-time job, trying to make sure not to tread into heresy. Right?
Do you think the
Because
church
so much is going
that
on,
the church
right?
that you believe Christ founded had the power to change God's laws willy-nilly? Do you think that was part of
Power
the?
to bind and loose, and there's
Yeah,
a limitation.
but that's not what to change God's laws, to make what was haram
Because
halal.
God is unchanging. So
Right.
by definition, his laws won't be changing.
But-
But how his laws apply to
Right.
people?
Right. But can the laws themselves, the principles are usury, the principles of
Yeah, I believe that usury-
capital punishment, can all these be changed?
If that's infallible dogma of the church, we use.
No, I'm not concerned if it's infallible or not. It's the teaching of the church. This is
there's a
a
distinction
very
that's
niche.
made between laws.
I know. That's why I'm not. This is a trap in a way because it's a very niche thing about what is and isn't
That's what
infallible.
I'm saying is
I'm just talking the actual teaching of the church, whether or not it's infallible by your definition. Do you think that the church has the authority to change God's laws?
طلع الكاش من جيبي قال لا نوع
Change God's law.
Yeah, to make what was haram halal, basically.
اريد اروح ارجع
I believe that
Because I don't think that we have that authority. Why? Because God has not
I
authorized
don't
it.
believe that we have that.
Well, as Muslims, we don't believe that.
We don't believe in it.
We don't believe that we as humans can overrule God's laws. We have no authority to do that. But you believe you do.
لو لو لو
But I believe
اللعبه خلى الموت خلى الموت على
I don't think it's complicated.
I don't think it's complicated. It's very easy, to establish that
from an
it keeps
outside
changing.
view, yes, but if
Yeah, I mean-
from a Catholic understanding, it is complicated.
I think that's a smoke screen for facing the realities of the church changing its teaching on really important matters, on a whole range of really serious sins, things which were serious crimes, like usury, which is still completely prohibited in Islam, of course, and in the Bible, but in Christianity now, it's perfectly fine. Where did that happen? It happened in the last 400 years.
Well, I'm looking for the objective truth, and even if that's very refined in detail, it's still the truth. It's not supposed to be a blanket symbol, because God isn't.
But that's part of the truth, which is a fact. It has changed. It keeps changing. I'll give an example. Today, pedophilia is wrong.
You
right?
have to look at
what
all
if
the
in
actual details of
20
the
years,
facts are.
the church came and said, no, that's fine. And this is not
But
against the Bible.
that's still a blanket statement, saying it was this way and now it's this way. That's not looking at the details, and I need to go look at the details to make sure that's true. And then I can come back to you and be
Okay,
like, yeah,
that's fine. But I have looked at the death penalty, for example. I have looked at the details. It's not difficult. The Bible has lots of statements where death penalty is required for, say, murder. There are plenty of senior doctors of the church, great theologians who support it, and numerous popes. Today, it's haram. You can't implement it, basically. That for me is not complexity. This is a complete 100% change in the teaching of the church. And there are many examples of really important issues like that. And I'm saying the church doesn't have that authority. The Quran criticizes Christians for precisely this point, actually. This is
Changing what?
the Quran's argument.
Christians can criticize pagans for this. And we can say Christianity is simple. We can make the same argument that Muslims make to Christians to a less conservative group. By saying we have these simple laws that you have to follow. Canon law is simple. That doesn't mean that at a deeper level it's still simple. There's still deeper levels to Islam than just the surface level. Like there's still heresies and arguments that happen inside of Islam.
It's just in Islam we don't believe that human beings have the right to overturn
Like a
God's
Jewish
laws.
person could say that there's
That's it.
contradictions in Islam.
For example, the Bible prohibits the eating of pork, very clearly. Christians believe they can eat pork today. A complete change in
Exactly.
teaching.
That's
Another example.
question
There's
I
so many
have for
examples
you.
I can give you.
Sure.
There are literally dozens and dozens of really serious examples where Catholics feel that they can overturn the teaching of God because of canon law or some pope.
Is that law a law for God, or is that law a law for man?
The law is in the Torah. It's from God. It's in the Torah.
From God,
The Torah is
but
from God.
Is it for God or is it for man?
What do you mean for God or for man? It's for.
I mean, it's like the argument of when Jesus was preaching on the Sabbath. Say the Sabbath was made for man, not man made for the Sabbath.
Yeah, but that wasn't quoting a
because
law.
God's law isn't made to restrict God.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
made
talking
to
about
restrict
very
man.
clear prohibitions in the Bible about eating of pork, and yet Christians overwhelmingly today think it's perfectly fine to eat pork. That is, they've abrogated God's teaching. Islam as well, of course, has maintained the teaching of God.
Exactly.
And this is again an example. In all of these examples, by the way, and in every single case, Islam has preserved the teachings of God. Christians have abandoned every single example we've been through, whether it be democracy, usury, homosexuality.
I have big problems with this in that regard specific, because if the Torah has been corrupted, and the Gospel has been corrupted, and the Psalms have been corrupted, why would the Quran not be corrupted? Is that not a really
That's a different
bad
subject. God has promised, the Quran actually answers this. It says that when God gave these particular revelations to the Jews and so on, it was responsibility of the rabbis and the scribes to look after it. They failed to do that. God has promised in the Quran that He will preserve and maintain the final revelation to all of mankind intact. It's God has promised that He will preserve it. And the funny thing is, well, not the funny thing, the fact is, He has done that, because the Quran we have today is identical to the Quran. We now know this. We have manuscripts going back to the 7th century.
the Imams are currently preserving the teachings.
So unlike the Bible, which has been, the original message has been partially forgotten, this is the Quran, it's been partially corrupted, God has preserved His final revelation. Why? Because it's a final revelation to mankind.
How do you know that specifically has been preserved?
Well, we have the manuscript evidence, if that's what you wish.
Do you think that the teachings of the Quran through the Imams...
Let me answer. In the Birmingham, we have a Birmingham Quran in the University of Birmingham. I actually spoke to Professor Thomas, who was the head of the department on that, and he's not a Muslim, has said the Quran we have today is the same, it's identical to the Quran in the University of Birmingham, dated to the time of the Prophet himself.
That's an external
That's a scientific verification.
Yep.
Now, there is no verification. What's the oldest Torah we have in manuscript form?
200 years after Jesus, I think. I'm
Right.
not sure.
If Moses existed about,
Moses, sorry.
yeah, it's literally many, many centuries after the time of the people they purport to say, when it was transmitted orally, probably.
Even the Bible.
How does that compare to the other texts that are written from that time? How well is the Torah preserved in comparison to...
Well, we see, we don't know that has been preserved. That's the problem, because we don't have any original.
Preserved in the current manuscripts that they have.
But we don't have any
We compare
originals.
that to manuscripts of other documents from the same period of time.
Well, other Jewish documents.
Other Jewish documents or other documents in general.
The point is the gap in time from
Does that
Moses'
say
time. So when did Moses live, roughly? Do you think about 2000 BC-ish, or should we just say 2000 for sake of argument? The earliest Torah we have, fragments, not the complete one, is the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we got parts of Isaiah and so on. This is about 200 BC. We have a massive,
1,800
well
years.
over 1,000 years gap between the original Torah given to Moses and the text we have now. We have no way of confirming or denying at all that it's been preserved reliably or trustworthy. We have no means of knowing that. But we do have a means of testing that the Quran has, and we now have actual physical proof.
Because you have other texts.
So I can't answer your question. We have no way of knowing if it's reliable or not. The Quran says, by the way, that Jews are partially forgotten and they've altered.
That's the biggest thing which has drawn me to Islam is that. I think
I think that man, I don't want to name
not sure.
his name, but he's a heckler. He's an Islamophobe, right?
I'm joking.
And I came to talk to you because you're not.
I like the brotherhood which is associated with Islam, and that's one of the biggest things is pulling Lawrence towards Islam.
Who's that?
Lawrence,
Who's Lawrence?
the Taiwanese guy that I hang out with.
Okay. I don't think I know him.
So yeah,
And he comes from a Unitarian background, so he's
Okay.
already a lot closer.
He's
So
already
like a Unitarian Baptist.
That's a bit of a contradiction in terms, isn't it? But anyway,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
why-
I don't really understand it, but
he's on the right path, clearly.
so why do you believe that Jesus?
I mean, yeah, he's been coming to church,
Oh, your church?
like London Oratory.
Oh, the oratory. Oh, okay. Right.
So
He's on the right path.
I have a question.
I meant it's Unitarianism. I meant that was on
He's
the right.
becoming less Unitarian.
So why do you believe Jesus is God?
I literally throw everything I have to you for.
Why do you believe Jesus is God?
Why do
I mean,
believe
do you have
Jesus
a
is God?
scripture saying that Jesus is God? Do you have a conclusion that, you know, do you follow, just said you don't agree with church's law, right? So, in the Bible itself, I'm pretty sure there is 2 or 3 verses that saying that Jesus, he never said that I'm God. One of the verses said,
we do disagree.
I'm going to
Because
my
I
God and
believe-
your God. And one of the verses I don't remember.
Yeah, it's in John's Gospel.
Yeah. So why do you still believe in this? Like maybe this is fundamental.
Because I
between
do
Muslims.
believe that he did say that, oh God, and that's why.
Where was that?
That's why the
Where?
Where did he say that?
in Mark, and then that's why the Pharisees proceeded to tear his garments and call
Okay,
him blasphemous.
so where did he say he was God? You said that he said he was God. Where does he say that? In Mark, you say. I've read all of Mark lots of times. I've never come across a verse where he says he's God.
So look at my special folder.
It's special.
Fine.
I like that. Very good, very good.
Very good. Yeah, yeah. Go back to what you believe.
It's special Catholic translation. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Greek, shall we? Shall we go back to the Greek, which is actually the
I
trans?
have the Greek.
Good.
I mean, this website has the Greek and the Latin.
Take your time.
The Vulgate. That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Going back to the Vulgate.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible is still written, it's still read, and it's still sung. Like at the church masses, like.
But it's not written in Latin. It's written in Greek. It's the wrong language if you're looking at the original.
But we consider Latin to be the language of the church.
It's not the language of the Bible.
But that's not even the language of Jesus.
And that's what we're
we
talking
do
about.
believe that the 3 languages of salvation of the church are
Yeah.
Hebrew, Greek.
I'm just saying there's not a single
Because
word of
those were the
Latin
ones that
in the
were
Bible.
written on-
Yeah, I never said.
That's all.
I know it's Greek, maybe.
It's mostly Greek, but Hebrew and some Aramaic thrown in.
Yeah.
The Catholic, the church's translation of those documents into one uniform language.
Yeah, I know that. But coming back to your claim that Jesus said he was God in the Gospel of Mark, because there's a passage in Mark where Jesus denies he is God, Mark chapter 10, verse 17. He actually says he's not God. So I'd be interested to see where he contradicts himself.
So I gave him an example of Isaiah when he was 40 years old when he married, I don't remember her name, was in Genesis.
I can read Greek, yeah.
Another verse, he said he was 22. So we have 40 and we have 22. So this is a miracle of contradictions.
There are lots of contradictions. in the
So
Bible,
lots
yeah.
of contradictions.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
why should I believe in scripture where it clearly shows you contradictions, whether in
I
the
don't
original
believe that any
or
of them are contradictions.
So where does Jesus say he's God in Mark then? I'm very interested to see. Read this mysterious verse I've never ever come across.
Again, that's why I didn't want to delve into this, is because I know that it's
That's fine. Take your time. Take your time.
Well, no, yeah,
didn't say that he didn't
but respect, you made the claim, not me. I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
I'm just curious.
The claim
I
that was
made it-
originally made was that he never claimed to be God. And so I'm offering you
No. What you said, no, not quite correct. You said that Jesus said that he was God. Not that other people made out that he thought he was
I didn't actually
God.
want to bring up this back and forth if he did say he didn't say he did say, because I've had that like 10
Okay,
different
but
times.
your claim was that Jesus said that he himself was God. And I said I'm not aware of that verse anywhere in
In
Mark.
response, yes.
Yeah. I'm not talking about other people said, but he said this.
Yeah.
That's your claim.
Yeah.
I am God. Jesus said I am God in Mark.
Not verbatim.
Okay, not verbatim. We're already getting some fuzziness
Yeah.
now. He's backing back. He's backing down. He's backing down.
No, I'm not backing down. I know where this is going.
Okay.
Because
That's
had
what
this
I said to
conversation
you.
with
That's
you.
my question.
So where's
to
the
you. Where
passage?
Jesus said, "I am God." Because according to me, corruption, someone would come and say Jesus was God.
This,
Should I
by the
believe
way, is not going to get me to question the church. What's more likely to get me to question the church?
Well, I don't think anything. It doesn't matter how much evidence you're given. You'll still have blind faith. This kind of
looking
completely
at the
fanatical
most recent
faith.
stuff would be most likely to inch me away, rather than stuff from far back. Because it's the heresy going on right now in the church.
I think the denial of God's laws is more than heresy. It's apostasy, actually. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's just a deviant view is actually apostasy. When you,
my opinion, you wouldn't find that where Jesus said, "I am God."
He's not going to find it. I mean, it's obviously not.
I'm actually doing this out of like
learning.
no.
Learning about you believe.
I like
because
that.
He said,
No,
because he
no,
said,
he's not
"I
here to
believe
learn
in
anything.
yeah. Learning about you believe, right?
I don't know what the word is. Gratuitousness. Not
Okay.
quite gratuitousness.
Frivolity? No, I don't know. Okay. No, you're right. The verse doesn't. I can spare you your labours. It doesn't exist, by the way.
No, because I'm already here.
Oh no, I'm not going to. You can, if you think you can find it,
Take your
but
time.
we are limited by the length of the
I'm giving
day.
you the satisfaction of
No, I'm trying to get you to show me evidence from what you claim. That's all. Because you've had this discussion with Muslims many times, and for you to come out with that claim is quite incredible, actually. Because you're not going to win. It's going to end in an embarrassing.
what it ends up being is a disagreement.
No, because either Jesus did say I am God or not. That's not a question of interpretation. It's a question of fact.
Yeah.
You said Jesus claimed to be God.
Also the extrapolated.
No, we're not looking for ambiguous hints, which is what you may seek refuge in. We're talking about clear statements, which is what you said.
I don't believe the Pharisees did not see that as an ambiguous.
I'm not content about the Pharisees. You said Jesus said that he was God.
Yeah.
And that if you're going to retreat into ambiguity and hints and, oh, well, I interpret it that way,
I concluded it that way.
then that's not good
For a
enough.
man that spoke
That's not good enough.
For a man that spoke in metaphors and hyperbole.
See, he's now preparing the ground for interpreting an ambiguous verse, which he thinks to be clearly state that Jesus said he was God.
We want something.
Salam. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. That's impressive.
Me too. But
I don't care. I don't care how.
This gentleman claims that Jesus says he was God
don't you think the truth should be
in Mark's Gospel.
The wrong person
No,
talking.
I don't.
A little bit, yeah,
believe
yeah.
it
Bless
always
him.
is clear. I believe that sometimes you have to delve deeper into things to actually understand where the truth is.
But we are talking about biography of someone, which is Jesus, right? We should know if he was a prophet, a man, right? Or he was a god, right? So we would
You
know.
got married, yeah?
Alhamdulillah.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank you.
to
Wow.
believe that Jesus was God.
Wonderful.
or not. I gave you an example.
A married man, eh?
Christian, if I'm atheist, and I want to become a Christian, I come to you, and you say you should believe in Jesus.
I'm surprised in the country. It's recording.
Huh?
It's recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't try and dox me.
I was just standing here and they put these things on me. You know.
Because I think we have some verses in Bible that saying that Jesus is not God. I mean,
Well, he denies it. He himself denies
he
that.
himself, yeah.
Would you like to hear about some of these verses where Jesus actually denies he's divine? Not particularly. Not particularly. He doesn't want to hear Jesus saying, "I'm not God."
Just hear it.
Because I hear the same arguments over and over again.
What is the
I want to
argument?
talk about something different.
I honestly don't know
Because
which
you know
one.
a lot about Catholicism, so I want to hear.
Well, I used to be a Catholic,
So what, which one?
and I studied at Catholic college as well, but in part of my degree. So yeah,
So what converted you away from Catholicism?
Islam.
What got you away from Catholicism?
Islam. How many ways do you want me to say this?
So you moved away from Catholicism and immediately jumped.
No,
ship.
it wasn't as simple as that. No, it was a process, of course.
That's what
But
I'm looking
it was a
for.
combined
What
series.
moves you away from
It was a combined.
Catholicism?
It was a combined thing of looking objectively at the historical evidence about Jesus, who he really was and claimed to be, based on the best evidence we have, and discovering that actually is very, very similar to what the Quran teaches about Jesus. And then also discovering more about Islam anyway, reading the Quran, reading the Seerah, and discovering an amazing reality which I didn't know existed. So it was a process.
Simply, if you use
that's
your
well
mind
said.
the way
Huh?
I like what you said that. It was
have it
that
in an
simple.
open, heart.
It was a process. It took about a year and a half.
But I believe in metanoia, and I believe that happens over
That's his
time.
journey. That's what he said.
It's called Tawbah in Arabic. It's the same thing.
Tawbah, yeah.
It means repentance.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, but I believe that that's anti-metanoia.
Huh?
It's metanoia in the other direction.
No, Muslims believe that we repent from sin.
I know, but
Well, there's no other direction. That's what we do.
I'm saying that it's the metanoia away from the church.
No, metanoia is nothing to do with the church. It's to do with repentance
Yeah, but
to
I
God.
believe that the church is close to Christ.
We don't
So
repent
moving
to the
away from
church. This is idolatry. The church is not worshipped. It's God who we turn away from sin to God. That's what Islam teaches. That's what Jesus taught. We don't turn away from our sins to the church. Church is not God.
The Pope is the representative of
The church is not God. We don't worship the church.
But you just said that I don't follow the church 100%, right? Yeah, earlier in our discussion, you said I don't believe in.
I don't follow what the Pope says. 100%.
So, but
Which
the
Pope?
is
The Pope say
representing.
contradictory things
Yeah.
on fundamental matters over the centuries. I've already given you 5 examples of fundamental
I'm
things.
saying that's what I need to look at.
Well, but look at it now. I mean, look at it now if you
Maybe
want.
we can wait for Jesus.
But you see,
to say
I even quoted to you the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I looked it up on Google, which proved the point, and yet you still want to look into it. I mean, you do agree that the Torah mandates the death penalty. Obviously, you know about the 10 Commandments and everything else. But you compare that with the the Catechism, and you have a contradiction.
What's your name? What's your Noah. This is Mahmoud. That's me. So I think you are stuck right now, in a way that. Now I'll tell you why. Because, I agree with him.
I'm wiggling my way around heresy.
That's fine. But,
Wiggling.
Yes.
Is that how you negotiate heresy? You wiggle around it. Okay.
but I do think I do believe there's
when I see a heresy, I go in the other direction.
Right.
I do believe in Paul what he said, that there is no verse in Bible saying Jesus. He said that I'm God.
You are named after a prophet. You are named after a prophet.
I'm not. No, I'm named after Paul McCartney, probably. He was not a prophet. He was one of the Beatles.
Yeah.
He was named.
Huh?
He was named after.
No, he was probably named after another Paul. He was his granddad. Who was anyway. Paul was a common name.
Yeah.
Because
Do you know what it means in Greek? Embarrassing. It means small. It's the most unflattering name I can think of. It has like zero impressiveness.
because
Why would you call a guy small? I mean,
well, because he was a big guy. He was a big, knowledgeable, conservative.
who? Paul McCartney?
I completely think the opposite.
I don't think he was born like that. When his parents gave him that name, they were like, oh, he's a big rabbi, big guy. Let's call him something. No. It was his. Actually, his name, to be serious, was Saul. He was named after the first king of Israel.
Yeah, from high up.
He was named after a king, a Jewish king. The one that apostatized, of course, and ended up getting killed. But anyway.
That's not an argument for me. That's an argument.
No, it's not an argument for anything.
I mean, did the Jews believe the apostatized?
Oh, yeah. I thought it was a renegade, an apostate.
I wonder if there is a group that believes that. They're like.
Do you know why they thought he was? Because he taught the abandonment of God's law, the Torah. He says that in Ephesians 2:15, that in his view the law has been abolished. Wow. It's like a Muslim saying, "Oh, I think the Sharia has been abolished." It doesn't work like that. You have no authority to say anything. But Paul did that to his own Torah, and so he was seen as an apostate. Of course he was.
So I can tell Noah we have many several issues, fundamentally, right? So you are still looking for the verse where Jesus said, "I'm God," and I'm pretty sure you wouldn't.
He's never going to find it, isn't he?
Yeah.
I genuinely thought that it was in.
All right.
No, I believe you're sincere, but just
Yeah.
sincerely wrong, unfortunately. It doesn't exist, I'm afraid. Oh well.
Okay.
So you're now going to change your understanding now, are you, of Jesus? He's going to carry on with that belief, even though it's not in the Mark's Gospel.
I mean, I still don't believe in the heresy of usury. For usury.
Church doesn't have a problem with it.
Solid thing.
Church doesn't have a problem with it. Are you your own pope? Are you going to become your own pope now? Are you deciding what is and isn't Catholic doctrine? Which is a Protestant thing, isn't it? Are you really a Protestant at heart?
I think that's more orthodox.
If you go against the teaching of the church, you're a Protestant like Martin Luther.
I think if I rejected the Pope's authority, that would make me orthodox.
If you reject his authority by rejecting his teaching, which you are, then you're like Martin Luther. He did that. No, it's different because they never accepted the authority of the Latin Pope anyway, so it's different. But Martin Luther was a Catholic.
I would just become Orthodoxy is a form of Protestantism, it's just not Protestant.
It's different, except the Pope. That's it.
So if you went to the house in your home and you found no verse in Mark saying that, what is Jesus saying that he's God, would you change your belief? Because he said, I asked you, why do you believe he's God? I said, it's written in Mark that he said that I'm God.
I think if I found one incorrect thing, I would look for more things which are incorrect.
Sorry, you would. So if you find contradiction,
If I found a contradiction, I'd go against that contradiction, and then if I found another contradiction, I'd go against that contradiction. And the contradictions would build up, and the heresies would build up. It would just be, I see one, I hold It's not like how I operate, because there's so much weight rooting me in my faith, outside of just like church teaching.
You mean private revelation?
My dad didn't convert to Catholicism because of like going and getting baptized. My dad was raised atheist. He became an occultist and then he converted to Catholicism after visiting Medjugorje, going and learning about the church, about the faith, and moving towards it because of private revelation.
I think this is a big thing of this private revelation, if I may speak to.
I believe that
that's what roots him into this. It's not anything else.
I believe that private revelation is incredibly important.
Yeah, but they're not authoritative for Catholics.
But in a society that is living the way that it is, I think that private revelation is a little bit more universal, a little bit more useful.
The teaching of the church is much more important for Catholics.
Miracles, though, is the whole reason why
you can't follow private revelation rather than the church.
The whole reason why people follow Christ is because of the miracles that he performed. Right? Because he showed fruits to what he was saying. That's how people knew that he was who he said he was. Jesus. That's why we believe that he was God, is because he rose from the dead. There's a miracle tied to the idea of his divinity.
But why you said it's a miracle?
That's why I believe in fruit.
So if it's
my
miracle,
dad converted to Catholicism because of the fruits of Medjugorje. So because of the miraculous.
You were there miracles in all religions.
People losing tumors.
You're aware that there are miracles claimed for all religions.
Moses was, for example.
Yeah, but that's why I put.
You see, they talk about the fruits. They cancel each other out because all religions make that claim. Judaism does, Islam certainly does, Christianity certainly does, Hinduism does. You know, India, there's the gurus, who full of fruits, as you call it, miracles, to prove that their particular Hindu is divine. But should we bow down and worship these gurus? I say not.
No, because you have to look at the fruits. You have to look at them under a lens.
But you see, your argument was about the fruits, about the miracles. But I'm saying the problem is it doesn't work, obviously, for the reasons I mentioned. Because I could get a Hindu who say exactly the same thing. There are Hindus, I've seen them on YouTube videos. Mormons, miracles, lots of miracles in Mormonism. You can't use that as an argument to say your faith is exclusively true faith. You can't use it. Because everyone says the same. There are lots of miracles in Islam. The Prophet himself did miracles.
Yeah, but I don't know the last time that Muhammad appeared in an apparition.
To you, it has appeared to many noble people. Famously, Imam Bukhari, who compiled the gold standard of hadith. He compiled it having had a dream and a vision of the Prophet, who actually told him to do it, to make a collection. And
vision?
I don't remember if it was awake or not.
Had an awake vision.
It was a vision. I'm not sure if it was awake or not. I can't remember. But lots of
that's one of the distinctions.
Okay, there are lots of visions that people.
A dream can just.
A vision's a vision, whether or not it's awake or not. It's not the issue for me.
For me, it is a vision.
Okay, it's not for me because a vision can be an authentic vision. In Islam, some very distinguished saintly Muslims have had visions of the Prophet who have told them to do things. Miracles as well.
Where I was exorcised and I was possessed, and I had an exorcism.
Was it successful?
Yes.
You sure?
Yeah.
So I'm teasing.
It was right before I went to see a priest called Father Jim Black.
Yeah, well, we have exorcisms, something similar in Islam as well. So it's not unique to
But do you have a right to exorcism?
We have exorcist rites. Yes, they're not the same as the Catholic ones. Yeah, that's true. So all of these criteria.
Are imams trained in exorcism?
Some are. Yes.
Do you have like?
What's the name of? What's the Islamic term for exorcism? It's not exorcism. There's a technical word. I forget the name of it.
Like when you have a jinn.
Yeah.
Talabus.
Yeah. Anyway,
Talabus.
this is a very sophisticated spiritual practice where people are oppressed by demons or evil jinns and so on to exorcise or to banish and so on. Buildings and houses and family. This is a very sophisticated spiritual program to deal with these things. It's not just in Catholicism. That's something I learned. Is that Catholicism isn't unique in that sense at all.
But it does have diocesan exorcisms and papal exorcisms.
Yeah, but that's just a technicality. Diocesan is just to do with bishops.
It.
So all of these arguments, unfortunately, all of these arguments don't work because other religions claim to do the same thing.
The same thing, exactly.
Do you get that?
To an extent. That's why I say.
Okay. So it doesn't work. So you need to have other arguments.
A diocesan exorcist doesn't have the same authority as a normal priest. A normal priest isn't actually supposed to do the rite of exorcism.
Yeah.
They're not actually given the authority to do so. And a diocesan exorcist doesn't have the same authority as a papal exorcist.
Yeah, but I'm saying exorcism itself is not unique to Catholicism.
Exorcism
so all these fruits that you mentioned are not unique, and they can't be used as fruits.
God isn't unique to just exorcism.
I know that.
I think it's stuck. Noah, so.
No, it's true.
So
they are possessed by Satan. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
When they're worshipping Satan, back on there, orgies, paedophilia, child sacrifice, birth sacrifice, the devil Satan possesses them. He lives inside of all of them.
So.
Yeah.
So Noah. So.
I dealt with enough of that. My dad was an occultist. The whole thing.
Fair enough. So can you think of anything unique about Catholicism that Islam doesn't have, for example? I don't mean the Pope, I mean in terms of spiritual practices or truths.
Papal exorcism.
Papal exorcism.
An official rite of exorcism.
There is.
Which a priest specifically is
there are no priests in Islam.
So there's no imams which are given authority
Not necessarily.
on behalf of the country or whatever to go off and do it on behalf of that.
I don't know about that, but
Because that's the way.
spiritual.
That's why the diocesan exorcism works.
Yeah, but yes, I know.
The
I used to be a
exorcism
Catholic.
comes from a bishop.
I know this. I used to be a Catholic. I know this. It's not the point. The point is, I'm talking about the essential point about exorcism is there in Islam too. So you've not seen anything really that's unique. It's actually found in Islam, but in a purified form, without the corruptions and the church changing God's laws when it feels like it. In a purified form, you find it in Islam.
This is another thing, which is that when my dad was involved in Catholicism, he dragged some of that occultic stuff in. So he would go around and do exorcism, and that would consist of praying with people. And sometimes it worked, but there was one time when it didn't work, and it went very badly, so he stopped doing it. Because there's a level and extent of authority. There's a pope who used to summon demons so he could figure out how to banish them back and do exorcisms to send them back. I haven't seen an imam do that.
Oh, really? You're quite familiar with Islamic practices, are you, throughout the Muslim world on this subject?
What I said is I haven't seen an imam do
that. No, but my point is, you are then quite familiar to make that statement. You're talking as if you have knowledge about this.
I said that.
Well, which Muslim countries have you visited, by the way? Which Muslim countries have you visited, by the way?
Jordan.
Right. And when you were there, did you come in contact with people who practice exorcism? Did you investigate this? You didn't. So how can you make these statements? I don't understand. You have no experience of this. How can you make these claims?
I was saying that in the hope that you would make a rebuttal.
Well, my rebuttal is that you're not speaking from knowledge.
I'm not talking about
You're saying, oh, I've never come across an imam, but you've never even spoken to an imam about this. I mean, the Muslim world is full of imams.
I'm being honest in saying that I haven't seen an imam do an exorcism.
Yeah, but you have very limited experience, so that doesn't.
Yeah, I'm saying that, wondering if you.
I've read about it and heard about it, but not personally. But the point is,
I have seen
Well, what we have seen, I have experienced that. Like
I know people who have.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not. It does exist. But the point is that Catholicism is a man-made institution that believes it has a right to overturn God's laws. That's my argument.
Goes back to Acts when they were there's the guy trying to cast demons out.
I think you have a very difficult homework.
And the demon said in response, I know who Paul is, I know who Christ is, but I don't know who you are. Because there were people going around like trying to exercise people without authority. So, like biblically, that's my understanding of the outside judgment.
In Islam, you don't need to have an authority. You don't need to have an authority.
Because the church believes that there has to be authority.
Well,
because in certain cases,
culturally,
there are
I think.
spirits which, if you tell them to
But the point is,
then you don't have any authority.
the authority is the problem with your argument, because the very authority you give to the church overrules God. The church has authority over God, which is idolatry and
My
heresy.
understanding is God has given authority to the Pope. Pope is given permission.
I'm familiar with the Catholic doctrine, but in practice, the church abrogates its God position over God and changing God's laws as it sees fit. I've given you five serious examples where it's done that.
Exactly.
We don't need any more examples. The church doesn't. I would argue the church doesn't have that authority to overrule God. That is a terrible apostasy.
That's straw man.
No, it's a fact.
That's a fact.
I've given you 5 examples. But
Catholics don't believe
I've given you 5 examples where it has. 5 actual examples. And you have not refuted any of the examples I gave you. So there we are.
Yeah, but you don't have the right to attack people in a good
I'm not
conversation.
attacking you.
Just say
I'm asking
Satanist.
you a question.
That's not a question, that's a conclusion.
By asking
That's
you a
attacking.
question.
I'm sorry, we have a good conversation here, but we can have it.